Oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to start this over. Every time you get a freaking Windows update, it disables the mic in your settings on OBS. I can't stand when it does that. Because at this early in the morning, I don't have the patience to re-record this and not in the way that I wanted to do it. Because I've already spent almost 20 minutes talking and then I look down and the bar's not picking up anything. Why? Windows updates. Oh my goodness gracious. All right. So, a quick story that I told at the beginning of my last video that you guys didn't get to hear is this. Yesterday, I was driving home from work and I passed the Tempe Library, and there was 5 to 6 emergency vehicles out there because it looked like there was a homeless guy that didn't make it. 110-degree heat in Arizona. You're not going to make it outside for very long, especially since I stopped at the gas station and the cashier was catching a homeless guy stealing 2 large beers in his pockets, and he told him to put it back, and the guy just looked at him like he didn't understand. And he was going outside to drink heavily in, well, probably being extremely dehydrated. But my point is, they waste thousands and thousands of dollars with emergency services once the homeless pass on. But instead of helping them while they're still here, they help them on their way out. Which, as I noticed, there was a significant group of homeless people out in front of the library, because that's the public libraries basically become a homeless shelter. You walk in there and there's nothing but homeless people at all the computers. It smells terrible. And they have a security guard that walks the inside of it. The second you fall asleep, you become a trespasser at the public library. So even though they're using it as a homeless shelter, they can't live there. The point is, there's plenty of resources for everyone. They just don't matter because they're not exploitable. They have no value until they cost society money. Anyhow, it was much well laid out. It was much better laid out originally when I did this. Right now, I'm hot, I'm miserable, and I got to get ready to go to work. So that adds another element up to this. All right, so let's get into our monologue today. So title was it generated this from one of my more popular videos. I think this was one about where I talk about how more and more people are working full time and living in their car. I wrote it from the perspective of a 25-year-old single mom who works full time and isn't getting ahead in society. I don't know why it chose to emphasize this particular part of the script, but let's just roll with it. They say I'm too smart for this job, like that's supposed to be a compliment, not a warning. Because in the real world, being smart doesn't get you more money, it gets you more work, more guilt, and a front row seat to your own underpayment. I've got a degree, a kid, a full time job, and I still can't afford peace of mind or name brand cereal. So if you've ever been told you're too smart for the bare minimum, welcome to the club. Grab a slice of corporate pizza and let's talk. When you walk into a job interview and within 5 minutes, the interviewer says to you, and this has happened to me a dozen times, we think you would be bored here. One of the jobs that I interviewed at between Walmart and the call center was this place that was up on Elliott and Kyrene. I remember it because I passed through there all the time on the way to Walmart. And I remember walking in, looking around, and seeing there's about 20 technicians on the floor, and they were all doing the same thing. They were making new computers. And I sat down with the guy and I looked over the job description again, and it was very simple. You make computers, you repair computers. That's your whole job all day long. I'm not certain who they were repairing them for. It just looked like a garage. Bunch of guys standing over computers, not too bright, no one really talking, just kind of doing their own thing. It was an open air office, so there were no cubicles. It was just lines of work desks. I think it was 10 on each side. But within a few minutes, I understood that this guy's like, you know what, you're too educated for this job and you wouldn't fit in here, which is something that I've heard in a lot of different places because many businesses, they require a STEM degree to do anything that they feel is technical. I don't have a STEM degree. So I've gone through many interviews. I interviewed at SRP one time, and the people in the IT department hired me right away. And then the next day, I got a letter back or an email or something. I think it was an email from their HR group that said, we don't hire people without STEM degrees. And you were talking about a $16 an hour job. And I thought to myself, good luck finding that guy who will take $16 an hour to work here. But obviously, there are enough people out there that are desperate enough for that job that they will take $16 an hour, because that seems to be the going rate in entry level help desk style work that still requires 3 to 5 years of experience. All right, talking point number 1. Being smart doesn't get you better treatment, it gets you exploited. Employers love to say you're too smart for this job right before handing you extra tasks with no raise. The system doesn't reward brains, it rewards burnout, quiet compliance, and pretending you're grateful for crumbs. If you're thinking too much, you're a threat, not an asset. This is where that phrase comes in. I want a nation of workers, not of thinkers. The problem America has right now is it's got too many college graduates and not enough people who are willing to work trade jobs, dirty jobs, jobs that come with the added benefit of destroying your health. Any trade person will tell you that the chemicals and smells and just the dirty environment, it gets to you. Whether you're a welder, a plumber, or a carpenter, you are exposed to harmful substances all day long. You think breathing in sawdust all day as a carpenter is good for your health? No. But they try to put the trades in the best light, right? Whether or not people go into them, I'll tell you this, it's not fun to come out as a carpenter or car mechanic or any of these jobs, because even if you come out of that school, your first years, it's going to take you a lot of years before you get that 3 to 5 years worth of experience. And that means you're going to be minimum wage until you get those years of experience. That's even if you can get the years of experience. Because remember, in order to get experience, you have to have experience. So it's almost like catch-22 at most jobs. Because as I mentioned yesterday, our society currently runs on a plug and play model for employment. Either you can do the job or you can't, and they will find someone who will work for $16 an hour. That may not be you. And the worst part, and I say this in almost all my videos, is that it is entirely possible for you to go your entire life without actually getting a job. If every time you go into the job interview, you seem like you're too good for the job, too educated, even on paper, if they look at your resume and they say a master's degree, a bachelor's degree in like quantum physics or whatever you might have, they're going to look at that and be like, I like that education, but I don't want to pay you. And sometimes you'll walk into a job interview and you will know from the get-go that they're trying to lowball you. They're trying to lowball you into a job and see whether or not you will take that $16 an hour. In fact, this happened to my friend last year when she got her sales job. I remember exactly where we were. We were at Saguaro Lake. We were paddleboarding, and we got to about 100 yards offshore. She stopped, she looked at me, and she says, you know what, I'm going to negotiate for an extra dollar. She called up the person and said, hey, you know what, I do believe that I'm worth an extra dollar an hour. I don't know how that conversation ended, but I remember she just had this just wild thought. It's like, oh no, I want more than $16 an hour. But your employer doesn't think you're worth it. Talking point number 2. Overqualified is just another word for we're not going to pay you what you're worth. You'll get stuck training people who make more than you, solving every hard problem, and still end up in the same paycheck to paycheck hell. Promotions aren't real. They just give you a fancier title, a lanyard, and a pizza party while you stay broke. Everyone I know is broke. Like from person to person to person, the emotional support tech guy gets to hear the stories from every single corner of Pound Town. Every single day, I talk to someone that's financially broken, and they're not quiet. And I talk to them, you can feel the burnout. Number one, that's the one thing that no matter who I talk to at the Death Star, that's the number one thing. They're working way too hard for not enough money, and most of them, I would say, are in the category of they need help. They need larger paychecks. They need more time off. They need more vacation. They need more sick days. They need help. And no one's helping them. So, what's going to happen? Just like light bulbs, each one is going to burn out. Just like that. One at a time, at a time, at a time. If it was just one person, who called me on a regular basis, I would understand. But it's every single part of the corporation where people aren't making enough money. Every single part of it, from the lowest low to the highest high, you're just like wondering, it's like, how is this place even open? You're just like, all the workers are, look at them. They're all, they're all sad. All very, very sad. And you almost like can hear the terror in their voice. Like, what am I supposed to do to make more money? I already have a regular job, a part-time job, and I work on the weekends. What can you do? In fact, I was reading something the other day where a guy found mathematically proved that you only escape from work for 3 hours during your work week. And how did he come to this conclusion? Very simply, commuting and getting ready for work in the morning should count as part of your workday. Because I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning today, made something to eat really quickly, and then I got on here to start working on content. By the time I get to 8 o'clock, I've already been working 2 hours before then the commute and then getting showered up. You get done with work, you got the commute home, then you gotta make something for dinner, and then you gotta be in bed by 9 o'clock, so you get 8 hours of sleep. That leaves you with about 3 hours a day of time to power down. That means that people aren't getting enough freedom. And I thought, you know what? That's so true. I mean, I work before, after, and on the weekends, and I'm not making it. So what are people doing? You know what they're doing? They're not eating. They're choosing rent over food, rent over leisure, rent over sleep. It's getting terrible out there. And there is absolutely no end in sight. I mean, I just read an article this morning on CNN that said that things are going to start costing more because your cleaning lady's no longer going to be Consuelo. It's going to be an American doing all of those jobs. And if there's one thing Americans don't like, is doing the jobs of immigrants. That's why it's so easy to get them to take those jobs. But when you ask Americans to do factory jobs or warehouse jobs or farm jobs or hospitality, they're going to want real compensation. Or guess what? Those jobs just aren't going to get done. It reminds me kind of one of the plot twists in Brave New World, where the alphas don't want to do the work of the epsilons. What do you do when you don't have that class of people? That's what the immigrants are in America. They're the lowest level of people that take any job for any amount of money and don't care about the conditions. The conditions they come from are much worse. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of them, I mean, not all of them, but some of them are relieved to go back. So I remember watching a Vice documentary about 10 years ago in which a woman said, I only live to work, and it's still not enough. And I was just like, you came all the way from Latin America to America to realize that life is nearly impossible. Because remember, these people aren't here to take your job. They're not here to work in offices, maybe clean the office, but they're not here to work on spreadsheets like you are. They're here to do the work that's pretty much invisible, but that's very visible when they're not doing it. Remember when the bug hit? You had people in was it New Hampshire who couldn't find people to cut their grass or paint their nails, and they were complaining that no one wants to work. That was the big thing. This channel actually grew up on that title. I made hundreds of videos with the title "Nobody Wants to Work," because blaming poor people for not wanting to work is much easier than blaming them for working jobs with non-living wages. Because if you're not making $150,000 a year right now, you're not making it. Trying to get by on $15 or even $20 an hour, it's not going to happen. Not when rent averages $2,300 for a one-bedroom apartment. I mean, that's nearly what I pay here. And like I said yesterday, I got roaches again. So, anyhow, let's get into our final talking point. You can't eat IQ points. In a rigged system, being smart doesn't pay the rent. Desperation does. That's why we're here. Not because we're not capable of better, but because we needed a job now. And for single moms, students, and underpaid workers, smart is just another insult they throw at you instead of money. Just like flinging your feces at the glass at the zoo. That monkey doesn't know what else to do other than keep flinging that feces. And that's what the working poor are doing in America. They're firing their best loads right at the glass, telling people we can't live like this. Living in constant survival mode has repercussions. Mental health diminishes, overall quality of life diminishes, everything diminishes. And guess what? It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you still have to work harder. Because no corporation wants long-term employees. They don't want to promote you. They don't want to give you raises. They don't want to give you any reason to stay other than you're here, you're doing a job, and then you're going to go somewhere else to get a raise. That's the corporate model right now. And I've seen it my whole life. At every Death Star that I've worked, every morning you show up at Pound Town and you assume the position. That's what it is. Long-term employees aren't good for your bottom line. They're not good for the stockholders or the owners. They're not good for anyone, because the more you have to pay people, whether it's through wages, benefits, or whatever, the more they're taking from your profits. So you want short-term people. You want, Johnny Sixpack to show up, work on a spreadsheet for 6 months, and then go somewhere else. Same thing with Susie Rottencrotch. She shows up, she does a little work, and bam. You get to the point, and I've heard this from a lot of people I work with, is like they don't even bother to remember names. That's how bad it is. It's like, and I remember I was that way when I worked at Walmart, thinking back, because at the end of my 2.5 years of working there, I was the only person left working there. No one else was that desperate to stay working there for minimum wage. All right, let's get into our closing monologue. At the end of the day, I'm not too smart for this job. I'm just too aware of how broken it is. Too aware of how many of us are trapped in survival mode while pretending we're thriving. So if you're tired, broke, and wondering if it's just you, it's not. You're not the problem. The job is. I would have added to this conclusion, buy a lottery ticket, because that's your only chance out of this crappy, pathetic piece of junk job economy we currently have. Those jobs that you want, that pay the real money, they are only available by invitation. You have to know someone. If you're looking on Indeed for a job, you've already failed, because they're looking for that person, a person who doesn't want anything, a person that understands that every job doesn't have a career. We don't live in a world of careers anymore. We live in a world of gig work. We live in a world of Taco Bell, and in the future, all jobs are Taco Bell. So, with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys so much for the likes, the comments. My last few videos have been like ranked #1, which I haven't had that in a while. So waking up in the morning and seeing the little firecrackers going off every morning when I post a video, it's really nice. It means you guys are watching the videos. It means you guys are being entertained by the videos. And the overall rating on the videos is very high, which again, I work every day to try to find topics that are basically the same. If you guys ever turn on CNN in the morning, what is it? It's disasters, it's the weather, it's the economy. If you don't like watching the same content every day, why would you come here? Because it's practically the same thing. Anyhow, as my friend Jill said a few weeks ago, everyone's got to have haters.